this disgraceful attack that Labour mounted this week on Peter Dutton and the coalition as protectors of pedophiles. This was this bizarre thing around this piece of legislation that they voted against. But the really fascinating thing, and this is where, again, this idea of Albanese being weak comes in, because he sent his ministers, he let ministers like Claire O'Neill go out there and attack Dutton in the most vicious and vile terms. This also comes from, there was that item in the news several weeks ago, small item that said the Albanese government was going to start a much more robust opposition research strategy. This was its first outing this past week in Parliament. They fell straight on their face, and because Anthony Albanese would not then go out and either stand by what his ministers said or disclaim it, and just simply said, well, I'm just the Prime Minister. I have no responsibility for what my ministers say. Well, everybody said, that looks so weak. Stand by your people or smack them down.
What happened there? Because there's two trains of thought: that he threw his ministers under the bus by not standing behind them and backing up what they said, as crazy as it was, or that he was distancing himself. I mean, what do you think happened there? Because no doubt they would have seen the reaction.
What happened was, as James just said, he is weak and he is woke. I mean, what a ghastly combination, weak and woke. I guess the two often go hand in hand. But Rita...
I think he stood by his ministers. That's what I was trying to convey. I think he actually didn't necessarily abandon their position, because despite the backlash, he refused to, just say, things got heated, things were said that shouldn't have been said, that were unwise. He didn't rebuke them as you would expect after such a ridiculous, outrageous statement. So to me,
but the bloke's drowning. The bloke's drowning. He's waving his hand and drowning, because on every single front, it's a disaster. I said last week, you can judge all Labor's policies and actions by the 3 I's. Ideology, first and foremost, followed by idiocy, followed by incompetence. Every single issue. We saw it again yesterday when we were talking to Alex Antic about this later in the show, how Katie Gallagher came out and said they're announcing this big digital ID. We've been saying for months on this show, do not touch this digital ID. It is poison. It will strip you of your liberties and your personal freedoms. The digital ID is guaranteed COVID on steroids. IDs, swiping your way into every cafe. Do not touch it. Katie Gallagher comes out and says, oh, no, this isn't going to be mandatory. Straight away, Twitter is onto her saying, no, she's wrong. And they've called out one of Albanese's ministers, top ministers, as being wrong, misinformation. Their own, your own misinformation, guys. You were caught out by this sort of thing. Every single issue, James, you go through, disaster after disaster. We've had the Gazan refugees. We really want 800-odd people coming from Gaza. That's such an intelligent idea, isn't it? Really smart for the immigration.
Hang on, Rowan.
They're going to be vetted.
They're
going to be
vetted.
When
opinion polls show that 75% of Palestinians agree with the actions Hamas took, which resulted in rape, murder, and the worst atrocities. Let's grab them. What a great bonus for us.
I'm sorry, Rowan. I have got to pull you up on this here.
Please do.
Because on the form that they fill out, it says, have you been involved in any terrorist activity? Are you a terrorist sympathizer? Now, if they tick no, they could be up for a fine. So seriously, though, this Gaza thing. I'm glad you mentioned it, because this is an absolute outrage and a disgrace. Every day we see more and more footage of the Gazan people out there cheering, beating, jeering at hostages, jeering at them when they're being released. And we're supposed to accept that these people are just going to come in here and they all are just, fully on board with the Australian program, fully on board with fighting anti-Semitism and all of that. Come on, that's nonsense. But all of this stuff here, every area, Rita, where Albanese is making mistakes there, they're real coalition heartland areas.
Yes, that's the point.
We're talking about border security.
Yep.
We are talking about energy policy.
The detainees,
and all of this. All of these are the areas that they had a whole hairy-chested routine going in, saying, oh, we're going to be tough on all of this stuff, and oh, we're going to bring your power bills down and all this. Well, the climate stuff is absolutely falling apart. We're going to talk to somebody from Dubai at the COP28 in a little bit. But, the detainee thing, we've seen the first boat come in and land on Australian shores. So we have boats back. I mean, everything is falling apart.
The defence, you haven't mentioned the defence.
Because they're absolutely terrified of that border protection issue. It was something that had been, it wasn't an issue for the last couple of elections because they stopped the boats. The coalition stopped the boats. Something that the media and Labor and the Greens told us was not possible because there was push factors, not pull factors behind the boats arriving.
Remember all that nonsense?
We proved that was not the case. So the boats were stopped. Labor were saying, no, we're completely on board with these policies. We're not going to tinker with them. We've learned from what's happened in the past. They haven't learned, and they are weak on this. And their party is weak on this. This isn't in their DNA. They don't like these policies. They don't like these tough.
But we have. And also remember how mentioned before, every time the left talk, they invert the language. They switch the language around. So this, Rita and James mentioned this disgraceful labelling of Peter Dutton as someone who protects pedophiles or whatever, completely disgraceful, when it is Labor's policies, Labor's inaction, James, Labor's complete mishandling of the NZYQ case. This is this bloke who they've allowed to be released thanks to the High Court. They were never prepared for it. The entire Albanese strategy was based on The Voice. He's a one-trick pony. Right from day one, it was The Voice. The Voice was going to carry him through to the next election. He'd be a great hero of the left.
But also,
when The Voice went down, as we said on this show, that was the end of Albanese. All the other commentators, every other commentator said, oh, no, that's going to have nothing to do with the next election. People will have forgotten by it. Rubbish. Had completely trashed Albanese. It's completely undermined the self-confidence of the Labor Party. They're all running around like headless chooks with no policies, James, and mistake after mistake after mistake, which is costing this country a fortune, costing us our defence. We've now got Chris Bowen wandering around COP28 when COP28 wants to be nuclear. As we've always said on this show, if you really want to get to net zero, you must go nuclear, James.
Well, Rowan, I mean, the NZYQ case, this is the case, by the way, just for everybody to really understand what happened here.
Yes.
There was a Rohingya Myanmar individual here on a refugee protection visa. He sexually assaulted, raped a 10-year-old boy, lost his character grounds visa on that point, was put in immigration detention. The full reasons from the High Court were released this week. Now, Claire O'Neill had gone out and said, we thought we were going to win this. If you read paragraph 5 of the decision the High Court handed down, it is so clear that the O'Neill office knew that they had no chance of winning this case as far back as May, that there was no way that they were going to be able. They tried to pawn him off on some other country. No other country wants this guy. So, they knew that they were in trouble with this. And then here's the crazy thing. You read the whole judgment. The judgment just applies to this one guy. And then the government decides, oh, well, everybody else, let's just release everybody who could apply to. It's just ridiculous.
Ideology followed by idiocy, followed by incompetence. Every single Labor policy under this government. Ideology, idiocy, incompetence.